kind of the thing that spurred this conversation on is we had a debate scheduled on whatever the day before. I think you canceled, or the day of. I don't remember which. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember which. But you canceled.
The day before.
Yeah, day
Yeah.
before. Okay, so I had flown out to California to do the debate, and then uh, bam, that's what I got hit with. But here was what your post was. Effort post. The one person, seriously, who could get fully through to me while I was in active work was this woman, Rachel Wilson. She said something that rang in my ears: prepare for the second half of your life. That I was worth more and mattered more than what I was doing. It shook me awake and started me on the journey. God, I'm still on. Her husband, Andrew, in this video, was always kind to me as well. But I have to say, I don't know what they think he's preaching when going on these godless and low vibrational bully horse shows. You're not changing minds. You're making a rallying war cry for people who hate women. You're not saving these women, and you aren't saving any person this way. This is cruelty. You're getting easy dunks on the least educated, dumbest demographic for views, but even more heinously for money. It's hard to look at this as any sort of endeavor for anything but capitalistic greed and cruelty. Absolutely, sometimes kindness is not niceness, it's honesty. But kindness is never cruelty. It shouldn't be foregoing of love for monetary gain. You can change minds and have that power. You shook me awake, but all I feel now when I see you guys in social media is deep despair and uncomfort. So I had responded to this and said, why don't we just have a conversation? We can make it way easier, and then you can probe the motivations yourself, because obviously I disagree heavily with this post, especially when it comes to changing people's minds or the demographic which needs its mind changed the most. I would say that the manosphere itself suffered an insane amount of degeneracy from the people who kind of promoted the kind of typical red pill talking points inside of that space. And that when Christian ethicists were able to get in there and prove that not only are Christians not, but have a better and much more logical message, that we were able to capture a lot of that sphere and
I agree.
did so very quickly and very concisely,
I
and
agree.
have been able to move a lot of these red pill content creators more over to the ethics portion and side on behalf of men's liberation than has ever previously been seen. So, I that's kind of my opening kind of counter criticism here. So I'll let you flesh out what you meant and why you meant it, and then we can dive into it, I guess.
Sure. So for starters, let me just say that I didn't. What Brian had relayed to me while we were trying to schedule, we went back and forth for months. Where he said, "Oh, you can do this. Andrew's coming into town," and I was like, "Okay, let me know 2 weeks in advance," and then he wouldn't, and then he'd say it again a month later, do the same thing. Scheduling was a nightmare, and then finally, we did finally set something down, and then I was going through the middle of a divorce. So it was a very inopportune time. The night that the week of that was not going to work for me, and I didn't know it until the day before, because that's when things were pretty final. Not that that's like, I mean, I couldn't have gotten to you earlier, but also Brian didn't make me feel like it was something I had to do because you came out specifically to speak to me. Um, what I gathered from his scheduling process with me is that he was going to try to get me to try to fit me in, and you guys already had a full schedule of you debating other women, and I was just going to be there like for dinners and gigs. I didn't know that you were coming out to specifically speak to me, or else I would have definitely made that a priority.
Yeah,
That was not relayed to me that
I
way.
prefer to go up against
What
debaters, which I've always said I thought you were a good representation
Well, thank you for that.
of your particular worldview.
Sure.
So, as you know, I don't shy away from people who are
I could.
debaters. In fact, I often prefer it. Right? I often prefer
Sure.
that
I
over
Yeah, so
anything,
yeah, sure.
because then you can get to the arguments much easier and get to the absurdity of them often much easier too. So,
Well,
but
sure, but
what
yeah,
Brian
what
said,
I mean, yes, I
but
I
the
do, and
D,
I could send you, not that it matters
yeah,
because I don't wanna hash it over and be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Look at the receipts for this,"
But
but
Brian, but your post said that you felt like I made women unsafe.
I think that you do.
Okay,
And I was not in the space to be dealing with this.
Did
Like, I
you feel
was
like
not
I was did you feel like I was gonna beat you up? Like, what did you
not
feel like I was
me.
gonna
Well,
do?
I thought that we were gonna do a dating panel and we were gonna be on it together. I didn't know it was just gonna be us.
Mhm.
So that's again, I didn't think that it was like because I even told him, "Listen, me and Andrew actually end up in a lot of the same places. You're a conservative, I'm a conservative. We're different to varying degrees with different motivations. You're a Christian, I don't know what I am, maybe something." So we end up like at about the same place most times. We just have like slightly different pathways. So I said, "Listen, Brian, I don't know how interesting this debate is going to be. We are going to end up at the same places. I don't know what we're going to talk about for hours long. I don't think this is good content." He said, "Well, we can just do the dating panel then." So that's what I thought was going to happen. I had no idea that it was just going to be like me and you for hours. That was not my understanding of what was happening. So yeah, I just didn't want to be on a panel where like you were laughing at like stupid
Creator.
and I was just sitting there for 7 hours like having to deal with it while I was in the middle of going through a divorce. So that's that. So yeah, I apologize for doing that if you did fly out specifically to speak to me. And I wish Brian would have communicated that a lot better to me. And I even posted screenshots and then I just deleted them because I didn't want to. I figured I will just talk to Brian myself if that's. It seems like a genuinely a misunderstanding. Um. So yeah, moving on. I do think that the way that I will extend to you that I agree that Christian men entering this space has been a very positive thing for the manosphere. I think about people like Michael Knowles, who I think has changed a lot of minds, who I don't think scares the hose at all. I think is a very fantastic role model for men and very kind and graceful towards women. I think that who is that other the younger Christian guy that Brian had on?
Chase?
Uh, I think maybe Chase. I
Mhm.
think that he was positive as well, and I think even he said, "I can't really do this anymore. The podcast is going a direction that, like, I don't really want to be aligned with. I can't do this forever, just, like, laugh at
I
forever." I thought that was very, morally positive. I think that he showed a lot of, even though it was good for him to go on that podcast, I think that he showed a lot of, grit in putting a stop to that because he didn't see, like, the way that it was going. With grace too, I don't think he talked negatively about Brian, but I don't know. But yeah, I think that Christian men entering the manosphere in otherwise what was a very degenerate place because of like Kevin Samuels, who would have like extramarital nasty into well into his 50s with personality and do drugs and whoever and whatever while like using these women was horrifying. But I also don't think what you do is extremely positive either. I think that you're not as bad as them. I don't think that you are a Kevin Samuels type. I don't think that you are wanting men to use and abuse women. Um, but I think your focus, what I think should happen in the grand scheme of things is not singling out a male or female demographic and telling them you are so much better than the other demographic and that's how you save them. I think that it should be a continuous talk about what can both sides do to take more accountability so that men and women work better together in a marriage, as people, as parents. Uh, you know, that's what I think should happen because I've been on the other side too. I
That's what we've
rubber
been doing
band.
for 55 years. It hasn't worked at all.
I don't think that that's true. I don't
Yeah,
think that
it
that's
is. It
true.
is. It is true. We are currently. I think you would even agree with this. We're currently in the most on which dysfunctional society which has likely ever existed. Not only is Huckle dysfunctional, but the next generation is the most in or dysfunctional generation which has ever existed, maybe on planet Earth at any time in
Well, I think
human
that's because of the
history.
pendulum.
Well, it's not just
I
because the pendulum; it's because there is
and because of
definitely
internet.
there is definitely an idea here. It's not just because of that either. They're also how does dysfunctional because of the idea of accountability. This is the case that there is a sense of accountability for men, and there really isn't much of a sense of accountability for women.
I agree with you.
And so, because of that, right, it necessarily these conversations go that direction where you get into the idea of social accountability and social duties. And what we end up finding over and over and over again is that there is an expectation that men uphold social duties and women don't uphold social duties. And if that's the case, then I don't know how you bridge that by not pointing it out, right? That seems like
I don't think that I don't
it's
have a
not
problem
only
with you pointing it out. In fact, I don't have a problem with you being what I wish for when you see Michael Knowles, he's not laughing at these poor
he's
women.
also ineffective.
I don't think he's ineffective.
Totally ineffective. He's
I don't think
he's
that's true.
considered a
Well,
complete sellout on the right. Working for Daily Wire, he won't go up against Ben Shapiro, who is not a popular right wing
no,
figure
but
the
but
same way
but
that he
not
used to
people
be.
entrenched, not people entrenched. We're talking about the normies. We're talking about people who are not entrenched in this world, in the politics world. The Daily
Yeah.
Wire is people are very entrenched in that world. When
But
you
the
see a clip,
entrenched people are the ones who change the minds of the normies. So you see this time and time
I don't
again.
necessarily think that
Wouldn't
that's
you
true.
agree with me that to a degree, as Fuentes rightly pointed out recently, Trump could be categorized as a demagogue? The thing is that's interesting about this, right? Whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, is that I can at least see the view that you could categorize Trump as a demagogue. But Trump has changed a ton of normies' minds, and he was on the fringe, right? His ideas were on the
Sure.
fringe. Everything that he thought was on the fringe. But what he did was because he changed the mainstream conversation around from what they were talking about, all of the people who had the couth standing, the I wear my suit, I wear my tie, I sit down, I do the optically correct thing, right? I'm above reproach, this and that. They actually ended up serving Trump, not Trump serving them. And so the thing is, like the Knowles of the world, right? They lose a lot of credibility when they do things like allow the Nallas of the world to walk all over them. They lose a lot of credibility when it comes as the pendulum is swinging more to the right. I don't think that they have a high amount of credibility, but rather they're considered patsies or stooges for a message that people increasingly don't agree with.
Well, I definitely don't agree with that, and I think that there are examples that I can say also of many white supremacists being invited into homes with kindness, and then their minds were changed. I don't think that go like a person going up to a white supremacist saying you're a piece of
That I
you there's no coming back from this and people are better than you. I don't think that's going to change the mind of a white supremacist, right? I think there are plenty
Yeah,
of
but that's not.
examples.
I don't think that.
Either way, I
I
think
don't
that
think
what I'm saying.
that is in any way equatable. Like even if I just grant the analogy, the only time that viciousness comes into play on whatever podcast or anywhere really that I'm debating with anybody is generally when somebody is poking or prodding or is trying to do some type of verbal
These are
assault,
children.
things
These are
like
children.
this. Well, okay, so here's the thing. These are voters, not children. And not only that,
First of all, I doubt that they're
yeah,
voters.
well, they are, and they're of the age to vote. But not only that,
Are.
it's not just most of the women that I go viral for aren't even that young. Most of them are in their fucking 30s or 40s. They're closer to my age than they're closer to an 18-year-old's age. So it's like, I don't know. I don't think so. I think that a lot of these women are entrenched in political power positions on the conservative faux right, like TPUSA and others. I go mostly viral for those exchanges, less viral for the exchanges with the thoughts who I mostly have just regular pleasant conversations with. In fact, many come away, they'll send me a DM and be like, I thought you were going to tear me apart. And I go, well, you didn't. You're not advocating. So what I'm looking for is, I don't care if you were a degenerate and you reformed yourself. In fact, I prefer that. I prefer. I'm a reformed degenerate. Half this chat's reformed degenerates, right? We're all, but
There
it's reformed degenerates. What
Mhm.
gets me is the people who advocate on behalf of that worldview and the degeneracy to the detriment of
I agree
society.
with you.
And so the point is to tangle up and no, I'm not going to take any witches from these people, but how they're put in a sense of danger, that is wild to me.
Well,
I've
this is
never
I
physically
agree with
done
you.
anything to anybody.
Sure, and I mean, obviously, I don't know why there isn't security there. I hope that now you guys have security at these whatever podcasts. I would in no way make excuses for the women who have, treated you in any sort of way. From my own experience on the whatever podcast, one of the women, I don't know if you watched my whole episode, one of the women threatened to hurt me, like, wanted to fight me.
Yeah.
And I was like I
They do
literally
that.
just I turned my head and I was just like Like, what? I think I went on, I was classy, and I think that that changed people's minds about my opinions. Like, I think that that made a lot of it, and you know what it really didn't do is it didn't make any enemies. And that's what I think is the problem. You might be changing what I don't think is that you're not changing these girls' minds the way that you speak to them, but that's not what
Well,
you care
some
to do is what you're saying.
some of them I change a lot. I change a lot of their minds, but I don't expect in most interactions, social interactions I'll have with somebody who's an entrenched ideologue, that you're going to change their mind in a single conversation, even if it's many hours.
I think maybe you should.
Though it does
That's
occasionally happen, right? I don't like I've had so many thousands of conversations. I'm very
it's like a
at navigating them and
kernel.
navigating debates that I understand that an entrenched ideologue, it takes a long time to unravel a worldview. Even your own worldview, I'm sure, took a long time for you to unravel. It took
Sure.
many conversations with many, many different people. Maybe some people opened up some aspects of it for you, and then other people helped kind of take you over the finish line. But the point is not night after night after night to show or to try to change the individual's mind who you're speaking to, but rather to reach the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, depending on the reach of particular clips or this or that, so that they can engage in the conversation, which is completely necessary for current society.
Sure. I think when it comes to, like I said, making enemies, you are in a unique position where most of your audience is male. And I think that you have a responsibility to
Most
not
people are in the
so
position where most of their audience is male or female. The truth
sure.
is that unless you're on TikTok, where the overwhelming user base is female, and that's why it's such a hellhole because you're in the mind of a woman. Most everybody's audience is overwhelmingly male. So one of the criticisms, this comes up a lot, right?
Hold on, can I finish?
Well, yeah, but hang on, let me just clarify this.
Okay.
People will say often your audience is mostly male, and kind of respond, well, what about the demographic of your audience? Is it mostly male? Yes, and it's like so I don't even understand the criticism. It's bizarre. But go ahead.
My I don't think that that's a criticism. I think that that's very positive to you. I would consider it very positive if most of my audience was female. I think most of my audience is. I think it's. I actually have a unique position where it's pretty split. Because I would label myself a feminist, and I have a lot of feminist, media, and also
You don't
I
think
do
your
have
audience is more male
carryover.
than female?
I do have carryover from like some of my OnlyFans
Hmm.
like years ago. And I also am online, so I think a lot of men will, or at least I joke about it. I'm
Hmm.
not actually, but I make edgy jokes, and I think that that's probably more catered towards men. So I think that, but my audience, my demographics are pretty split. A little bit more male or a little bit more female, depending on the social media. Um, but as I was saying, I think that you're in a unique position where you can create something really bad with your audience, or really really good. And I don't think that net you are a negative. I think that your messages for the most part are like really salient, really true. I tout a lot of the same messaging. I just think that if you see anyone who you're debate like, let's say, like, for on Twitter, if you're talking to any woman that you even slightly agree with, your audience will go crazy and say, "You disgusting degenerate." Like, you are the leader. You are the god, emperor, king of a small, I guess not even that small anymore. It's ever growing, by the way. Congratulations. Your audience seems to have grown substantially over the past few years. But of a tiny kingdom of mostly men who are very angry. They come to you very angry and they're searching for answers, right? They're angry at women with the way that women act, the way that they're treated, and you're sort of giving them the okay, like, yes, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to talk about and to them like this. And I don't think that that's appropriate. I think that if I had your audience, which I don't, and I can't tell you how to run your audience,
Hmm.
but this is my problem with you, or with the way that you engage, is that if I were you, I would say, regardless of how stupid these women look, we have to be better than them. We have to be godly men. We have to act like gentlemen, even though these women are, because we can't stoop to their level. We can't fill them with hate. we can't fill their DMs with hate or tell them that they're a disgusting degenerate. Like, you have to have grace. You have to. I mean, there are women.
How did these like? Wouldn't these same criticisms basically apply to you as well? Like, if I was the most uncharitable I could be, say, well, your message of pro-feminism is a completely divisive message, and the shrill feminists who I've heard in the various spaces who take your side demean men constantly, call them all sorts of names consistently, and you're right along there for the ride. So it's
Well,
like,
I'm not actually.
well, well,
I would
I've
argue
got a
that I'm
few
not doing that.
spaces. I've got a few spaces of yours that I listen to, right? And there have been
Sure.
many shrill feminists who are inside. This is a woman's space. Click,
And
done,
I
right?
definitely give pushback. I definitely give pushback.
And or you laugh at them,
Well,
or
if it's their
I've heard you
space,
when
it's
you're
their space.
debating, or I've heard you when you're debating, laugh at men, call them names, right? Not take any of their
Well,
into some of these Twitter spaces, especially if you're arguing with people.
that must have been 2 years ago, and I will say that that's what I started this saying is I think that I have found, like, my sort of equilibrium. I don't agree with the way that I was when I was reading Andrea Dworkin and when I hated men 2 years ago after the Destiny thing, my behavior was, all over the place, and I think, now that my brain's fully developed, I'm a 26-year-old woman, I not that that's an excuse, I've been very apologetic for the way that I was, towards men, and I think that what I was doing then was sowing destruction. I don't think that I was in these female separatist spaces and I thought that this is the way. This is the way. Men are never going to change. I'm angry at men. And a lot of anger fueled that. And I am saying the same thing to you is that
Do you
is, what
know
you're doing
when
to the
you
other
have?
side.
I'm going to tell you a few things that maybe you don't know because I didn't know until I had an audience the size that I do, where I
Mhm,
consistently run 5, 6,000 live viewers.
mhm.
I have maybe a million global fans at this point. I don't know, right?
Sure.
It could easily be possible. I'm just not sure, but it's a lot. I agree with that.
Mhm.
Um, but there's a phenomenon which happens that I'm not sure that you know about, which is that Twitter and various Instagram places, things like this, there are subversives who go in on purpose. Many of them, I believe, are paid actors. Many of them, perhaps agents of the state, and many of them, perhaps agents of a foreign state, who go in on purpose in order to pervert a message, go in on purpose in order to twist it,
I know that you're
or
not in control of all of your
well,
viewers.
it's not just that. It's not
That's
just
where we're
that.
going.
It's not just that I'm not in control of all my viewers. What I'm saying to you is I don't even believe that a lot of those messages, when you track
Are
the
your actual
account
fans.
and it was made 2 weeks ago, and then you look at every single post and it's on every single conservative person saying women are evil, women are this, women are that,
Sure.
men are this, men are that, et cetera, et cetera. And this is on both sides. When I actually had a live event at DebateCon and my pretty I mean, we filled the whole place. It was all
Mhm.
filled with Crucible fans at DebateCon.
That's
Most
awesome.
of them were married. Most of them were married. A lot of them had their wives with them. And the ones who were single or divorced or things like that, pretty laid back people. They didn't seem particularly angry. They seemed to get along with people quite well. And so the thing is, I think that maybe you might have a point that there could be some creators out there in the red pill space who have maybe maladjusted or socially maladjusted people who watch them or watch their messaging or things like this. I'm sure they exist.
I think that whatever
Um,
podcast specifically,
yeah,
I don't even think it's necessarily your audience. It's the audience that you sort of share with Brian. I think a lot of degenerate men aren't even really listening to your message and don't even have to buy into it for to see you laughing at a woman and think that yes, it's okay to laugh at
it is
this
okay to
whore.
laugh at people's stupidity. I'm a big firm believer in that. And
I
not
don't
only
think
that, I think
that's pride.
I think
I
it's
don't believe in
super
being prideful
I
in a
think it's
conversation like
super
that,
I think it's
especially
super
towards
helpful.
someone who is I don't think it's helpful, especially in this case where there's these women being who have no guidance, no parents to tell them that what they're doing
I
is
used to believe
disgusting
all
and
that.
wrong.
I used to believe all that. And then when I ran into just hundreds and hundreds of women where it's actually the opposite. They had both parents at home. They said, "Mommy and Daddy gave me a pretty good life," right? I didn't want to live under their evil
Well,
yoke,
that's what these women
right? I
say.
didn't
That's what
want to
these
live.
women say.
So they lie.
Yes,
So
of
how am
course.
I
Women
so
lie.
why is it if it is the case that these women are just lying to me that I should take what they're saying at face
Because
value?
you have to believe in the goodness of human spirit and that nobody would purposely do this without having some sort of defect, which is just true.
No, it's that's like just not true.
Psychology-wise, no, I think that if you can track it throughout psychology, what kind of women have to do this, you can track it sociologically, what kind of women enter this work. It's not rich women. It's not women who have 2 loving parents who are, doctors and do whatever. It's women who are traumatized. It's women who have
Well,
very
no, no,
little
no, no.
respect
Wait,
for
wait, wait.
themselves.
Most of the women who are getting laughed at are not sex workers. Just so you know, that's a
Well,
very small
sure,
portion
no, but it's
of
women
the.
who are naive enough to believe the lie that's being fed to them by higher ups, right? By
Yeah, but
people like Destiny.
but that's a shift, right? So it's like at first you're like, well, the thing is, Andrew, is that these workers are coming from a
Well,
broken
I'm
home,
saying that
this and
that's a well,
that.
I'm saying that that's the broken home. I'm saying it's coming from some sort of defect. I believe to some extent everyone is trying to be the best person that they're trying to be,
I
right?
don't
For
believe
whatever
that.
reason.
I literally
Okay,
don't believe that.
then this is just a difference in
So,
how we view
well,
the
I
world.
mean, I think I used to be more inclined on that side, but I don't actually believe that women are born with halos above their head and they're just little angels
I don't think that that's the case
until an
either.
evil man comes and corrupts them.
I
Or
don't think that's the
I don't
case
think that
either.
men also are born with a halo until they're corrupted by some event either. I
Sure.
think that people have tons of proclivities, and oftentimes they just want to be a bastard. They want to be a degenerate. They want to be a. Sometimes they do it just for the thrill. I just feel like doing this because it's fun. It's like there's an interesting phenomenon I'll draw your attention to. At many riots, have you ever noticed at riots, there's always fires. There's always fires at riots. And I was like, why is there always fires at riots? Like, first of all, it's actually not that easy to start a fire, just like a
People
random
wanna
fire,
destroy it.
right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that what happens is there's always in these riots, there's actually social studies on this who go and seek these things out purposely because they just love burning down. They don't. And they're perhaps otherwise good
Well,
people in their lives, right?
I
But
would
they
go on
just
to
like
say that
burning down.
yes, but an arsonist actually has a psychological background. So I come from a place I'm pursuing a psychology degree right now. I have a psychology background. There are still reasons why an arson goes to sow destruction, right? There are reasons why these people
Sure,
do what
there's
they
reasons
do.
why people do everything. But the problem with
Yes, of
the
course.
psychological analysis, psychology is the study of the mind, not the study of the
Yes.
brain. So if we're studying the
Well, it
mind, you're talking.
technically it can be both depending on what branch,
Well,
but sure.
you're not studying neurology, you're not studying how the brain fires, where it fires, the
You do
neurons
actually
responsible for which thing, right?
you actually do
In
have
a
to do that for a
cursory
psychology
way.
degree.
In a cursory way.
Sure. I'm not doing
Yeah.
a deep dive,
In a
sure.
cursory way, so that so the same way that somebody who was an animal biologist, I'm sure would get some biology lessons on the different parts of a brain or something like this. But
Sure.
overall, it's a behavioral. This is a behavioral
Yes.
pattern recognition
Yes.
um, position that you're in. It's the study of the
Yes.
mind. People have been studying the mind since the philosophers of old in order to ascribe motivations to people. But the thing is that psychologists cannot cure any of these things because they're not diseases, right? This is the problem. These are not diseases. So,
Depends on what you mean by cure, but yes.
the thing
You
is,
can quell. I believe that you can quell and you can
suppress
attack.
behavior. Sure, you can
Yes,
suppress
you
behavior.
can suppress behavior, you
Hmm.
can stir people into new
Yeah,
behavior.
but you
You
don't.
can
But that doesn't
manipulate the brain.
require. But what I'm saying is that if you're studying the mind, sure, everybody has a motivation, some underlying motivation, perhaps for almost everything they do. But it doesn't change the fact that they just want to do it. Now, you could say this is because of some childhood trauma, or perhaps this is from some other trigger, or perhaps it's from some other thing which exists. But you can't actually demonstrate or prove that this is the problem with the study of the mind versus if I have gangrene in my arm, you can be like, hey, that's rotting your arm. I'm going to give you antibiotics, and that's going to cure that. You can't actually zero in a psychological analysis and say this is actually the thing. That it's not.
Sure.
It's not even a
It's
possibility
not
to
an
do.
exact
So we
science.
can't really say like, oh, there was some external motivation that made them a arsonist. Because really, the thing is like they might just really like burning that down. And the more I talk to people, the more I realize
Perhaps
there's
there
a
are
lot
some
of
One in
people.
25 people is a sociopath.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of people who just have no problem being evil bastards unless they're restrained by society, and they're restrained by good people in society. So I don't have the idea that like everybody's always trying to do their best. I don't think that women who watch a man cut their off, for instance, for money, which I engaged with one chick
Oh
who
my
did
god.
that, right? I don't think that she was a good person. I don't think that she was
No.
trying to do the best things that she could do. I think she was probably an evil, and she deserved to get the dress down that she got. Somebody should give it to her at some
I
point.
think she should probably be in Town Square.
Yeah, probably. But the point is like somebody has to at some point have some reason and sanity here. Brian seems to be able to set this up in a way. First of all, he's not even cherry picking. Most of the time, it's just the women who are willing to come on and want to have
Sure.
these discussions. And the second is it's actually a low amount of them who are workers at all. Most of the time, I get in these engagements with these various women, it's the ideologies that they have, absent any of this like broken home, broken this, broken that. I just don't have the same. I guess after having thousands of these guys, I don't have the same view you do, that they're just blank slates who were corrupted.
I don't think blank slates necessarily, but I don't. For every one woman you're having a conversation with online, there are millions of people watching now. So I think that, if a woman sees, oh well, I've had this idea in the past, and when you talk about things, especially like virginity, like you were talking about on Pierce Morgan, why would I do all these things for a woman who is not going to be a virgin on her wedding night? Um,
Well, no, that's not really what the argument is. So the argument is actually framed, and I understand why people get this wrong all the time, right? Even though on that panel, I was pretty clear about how I fleshed it out. So the argument is just this. Inside of society, I think that men have a social duty to protect the infirm and to protect women. They have that's an actual duty which falls on them because they're the only ones that can. Women can't protect themselves in mass from a foreign collective or body of men, or the male element in society which would want to hurt them, or children, or even women who are in the society who would want to hurt them, or children. That would fall as a duty to men, starting at the family, and then all the way up to the national level with soldiering and various things like this. What I was asking specifically was, if that is the man's duty, what is the equal woman's duty in society? Is there an equal duty which they have, that men to match that expectation with men? Now, obviously, I think the only one that you could say, and this is totally reasonable to me, is reproduction. They should be moving towards
of course.
reproduction and family. That makes the most amount of sense. But
Yeah.
feminists never admit that. They never admit that there's an ontological purpose here that we should be moving towards. And so what happens is when I ask
I think
about
a lot
duties,
do, but
when
sure.
I ask about duties, I say, well, what is your duty? What is the actual duty of society? They say like, be nice, be empathetic, be that. They never say, well, the equal duty is reproduction. That was the point which was being made to her, and that's why she looked so foolish and got so pissed off and this type of thing. When I said the chaste virgin, I'm just talking about virtue. If this is a virtue that men have, right, and you want to have virtuous men, then don't you think you should have virtuous women to match them with? That, again, seems well within the confines of reason to me.
Sure, I think that you're telling. I don't think it's a I I don't think it's a one to one. But already, if you're saying that you should be a virtuous woman, and then you equate that with um piety, chastity, I think you're losing a lot of women. Mostly because we are in a day and age now where we have opened Pandora's box, and women are able to have sex, and they're going to, and we are never going to go back. So women, you're sending messaging to women who are like, well, I've already done this thing. I've already done this thing. I've already slept with this many people. I can't go back. I'm used up. I might as well just keep going. I might as well just keep whoring. I might as well just keep whoring. I might as well just keep having sex with men who don't love me. And I think that that's probably been what we don't want to do.
Well,
Um,
that's tempered again with the messaging of like, look, um, reforming now is way better than reforming later. And it would be a very good idea
sure.
to do it now. The longer that you engage, it's just like saying, well, I've already murdered
Sure,
somebody,
and
so
you're
I might as
and
well
you're
keep people. And I'm like, well, no, actually, if you stop people now, it's still better
well,
than if you
murder isn't the
continue
same
to
thing
murder
as sex.
people.
Sure,
Well,
but I don't
but
think
from a
it doesn't have
societal, from a
It doesn't
societal
have the same
stigma.
punch.
Yeah,
It doesn't have the same
from
punch.
a stigma perspective, though, the idea is still stigmatization. They're going to be stigmatized, and workers are going to be stigmatized. And
True.
the less the workers have, so like if you say I have 5,000 guys, you're going to be stigmatized a lot more than a woman who says I have
Yeah,
200 guys.
5,000. Yes, of course. But I think that I think when you are going on these shows and I think it's important for everyone who is intelligent and going on these shows who knows that people are watching them to try to do their best to not sow destruction between the we both agree that we are in a very dysfunctional us versus them place right now. And I don't think that going forward I don't want to be on a panel with someone who is laughing at this stupid girl who says, "Oh, I love selling my body. It's art. I like love using men. I love cheating." Like I look at that woman and I'm like, "God, like don't you know you're more than this? Like don't you know you're more than this?"
Yeah, but you're
And I think
tailoring
that
things towards the perspective of empathy in the woman. You're not tailoring things through the
sure.
perspective of the masculine and the man.
But I'm also not sowing destruction, so if a man sees that,
Well, you're
he's
not
not gonna
showing
if a woman
anything.
sees that if a woman well, that's not true, I've changed a lot of minds actually, and, I have a whole I mean, I have droves of women I barely have a social media presence anymore, I still get, so many messages of women saying, "Thank you so much, I needed to hear this." Your own wife, that's I listened to your wife was never unkind to me, your wife never called me a
We're
she never
not
did anything
unkind
like that.
people. We're only unkind
Sure, no,
people
and
to people who are unkind to us.
of course, but I'm saying she and I was so deeply in it. I was so deeply entrenched in it, and hearing, her say those things to me, I was like she's literally just right. It's the mother influence that I didn't have. So it's that. So obviously you have a duty to the men
But it
of
didn't
your audience,
work.
where I
It
have a duty
didn't,
to
but
the
it's Lab, it didn't work. Like, this is the thing that's so funny is like, you say, well, wait a second, Andrew. Like, I heard your wife. That made sense to
Mhm.
me. Right. And that's what I needed to hear. Well, it didn't work though.
What do you mean?
Well, you still went back to work. Right.
Well, I think that well, first of all, I mean, I'm not in work anymore. It took maybe 6 months after that to stop posting altogether, and then it was a question of, how was I going to make money, and also I was in a dysfunctional relationship, so I needed to, eh
Don't you still post like nudes and like that? Not anymore.
well,
Okay, but
not for
I mean,
years.
you were for a long time, even post this conversation. And the thing that's funny is like,
That's actually well, it takes a second. I don't think that it's not a snap effect, right? Like you said, it starts something in your brain that goes on and it goes on, and then you start to do whatever. I was also in a different relationship with someone who didn't have those same values as me. So I could have the values that I was having, and then I was, waiting for the man to lead in my relationship, and he was leading me in a direction that I don't think was positive for me. So I think that, you know, after whatever. For whatever reason, I didn't get out,
was
immediately,
this
but
the man that
it
you
did work.
said was way more masculine than me and would beat me up? Was it that guy? was
I think he probably could beat you
was
up.
that the guy though?
Um, um, that's neither here nor there.
Well, I'm
Obviously,
just saying,
I was
like,
joking, I was teasing.
there's a bit of irony there for
Well,
me,
I was
right?
yeah, of course I'm go I mean, for better or for worse, I stood by my man, okay? For better
Hmm.
or for worse, I stood by my man. Um, I don't have to do that anymore, but I also don't have to talk about it further.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think ultimately, I did, and I'm not doing it, and I haven't posted, a nude photo for several years at this point. So it is what it is. It did take a second, but it ultimately did work. And even while I was doing that, I was still, the cogs were turning. It wasn't a night and day
Don't you
difference.
have your OnlyFans in your Twitter bio?
Yes, but it's pictures of my ferret, so I am scamming people.
Oh,
Um, yeah, it's not pictures of everything. There's no nude photos of me on my OnlyFans whatsoever. It's just pictures of my ferrets. Um, so if you go to my account and you're like, "Oh, this girl has her OnlyFans in her bio," and you're like, "I'm curious," then I still get money. I still make about $2,000 just off of sorry horny suckers that are degenerate. Which you could say is evil of me to do, but I think they deserve it if they're trying to look at me naked
isn't
anyway.
that sowing division between the
In what way?
Well, in the way that you're scamming men, and that would
I say that I
necessarily,
don't post nude.
yeah, that would
I say that I don't post
necessarily,
nude.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But you just said, do you think you're scamming them? So if that's the case, aren't you essentially, aren't they going to resent you? And doesn't that build resentment towards women?
No, I don't think that they would resent me. If they resent me for not seeing me naked, I think that that's fine. I think that you can resent me for not being able to see me naked. I don't think that that's
But
part of the bigger
it's not
conversation.
resentment based around not seeing you naked, right? It would be
Well, it
resentment
is.
over the fact that they feel like they were tricked when you were advertising something that you
Out of
didn't
seeing
actually
me
give
naked.
them.
Yes, but the advertisement is towards seeing me in a capacity, so
Yeah,
I don't
it still
care.
seems
If they
divisive to me.
if they're bitter about not being able to see me after, I don't really care about something like that. I think on a bigger scale, I mean, yes, on if a woman, if one of my friends says, "Oh, this girl cheated on me," whatever, I'm gonna be like, that girl. And that's technically sowing destruction between this, but it's not in a big way. You know what I mean? I think it's on a smaller scale. I think that what I do when I scam people, so to speak, on my OnlyFans is much smaller scale than the things that we do, that you do, especially on the Whatever podcast, where men and women are both watching.
Well, I think
Um,
that, so let me tell you about the future that I see, and then maybe you can understand my motivations better. So,
okay.
the future I see actually doesn't have women in it, likely right now. Well, let me
What?
explain. I know that you're laughing, right? But I don't think you'll be laughing when I'm done
You're
explaining the
killing us
position.
all?
No, 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 no. That's
You're putting
ridiculous.
us in camps.
No, 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 no. That's not what I mean. I think that if women don't see a duty towards family and a duty for reproduction, then what necessarily happens as the population contracts is that if you have a fertile land, that other people are really going to want it. And so what they do is they come into your nation and they begin to change the demographic of the nation. That's what's happening right now in the
In the
West.
UK.
Well, even in the United States, it's happening in
Sure.
every Western nation I can think of. But those men don't have the same Christian kind of view or Christian prism of the natives who are here. And so what ends up happening is I think feminism is the architect of its own demise. If the people who are being imported don't have the same views on rights, and they don't, that kind of the nativist population did, what ends up happening when we're outnumbered in a democracy, Lav, is that they're going to take your away from you,
Sure.
and then you're right.
We're gonna have burkas.
Yeah. So, well, not just burkas, but I
We're gonna
think
be in
it'll be,
cages.
I think it'll be even worse than that
No,
ultimately.
yeah, no, I know where you're going with that.
So the thing is like if
It's a
that,
very defeatist view. I don't believe that
well,
that's where
it's the
you're
most
going.
probable future I can see.
There's no way that you believe
Let's
that.
take a look at the demographics. Take a look at the demographics here in the United States, a nation which was 95% white just a simple 40 or 50 years ago. Post Glass-Steagall Act, it's now less than 60%,
Oh, I know, I've seen the stats.
and it's going down drastically. And the same thing, the Hispanics are going up, but
Mhm,
not the Catholic Hispanics. You're getting a huge overture of non Catholic Hispanics now who are coming in. You're also getting a lot of Muslims who are coming in, and you're getting a lot of Africans who are coming in from Muslim nations.
mhm.
It's not actually, not only is it the most probable future that the people who are coming in don't give a about women's rights because we can look to the nation and culture from which they came and see that in those nations and cultures, women don't have any. But you're also bringing them into a democracy, which seems to me like it's basically a failsafe. They're going to take your rights, Lav. And there's not a damn thing that women can do to stop that because you don't have the requisite force to do it. And they're the ones who, through empathy, are voting for it. They vote
Yeah.
for it.
No,
So the thing
I
is
know.
like
I'm very aware
feminism's
with
the architect of its own destruction here. So
Well,
that's the future I see.
when I call myself a feminist, I think you're talking about it, not to be like no true Scotsman. I really don't believe I am like a Camille Pawley a feminist. I'm like very like I really do value masculinity, a masculine center. I value masculine genius. I think that I believe in traditional gender roles for better or for worse. Like I don't think that when I say I'm a feminist, I want to be clear in that I believe that women's interests are typically in the home. I don't, and the rights that I'm like a first wave feminist. I believe that we should have washing machines
Yeah,
and
I
men should vote in
understand,
our interests and
but
things like
don't
that.
you don't you but you must see 100 years in the future that if we continue in the reproductive path that we're on,
Well, no, this is I was gonna
women
say.
are not going to have rights anyway, Lav. And so when you say like, well, you're sowing division, I'm like, yeah, good. Like the division needs to be sown now because when it needed to be sown, 60 years ago, it was not sown. There was not the division which was necessary in order
Well,
for us
I
to
think you're
have this fight,
doing the
which was
opposite.
necessary.
I think that you are pushing us closer to that world because I think now I think really what can happen right now, I think hopefully I genuinely believe that women can change other women's minds. I think if we look at like things like mommy bloggers on TikTok, I think that there's been an explosion of white babies, of Western white babies on social media. I think Mormons especially have sort of championed this new mommy blogger space. Well,
Very,
of
very
course,
small.
it just happened in the past couple years, Andrew. Give it a second. Um,
It's not going to reverse the trend, Lav.
I genuinely do think, I mean, it helped change my mind, it sent me down a path, all my friends wanna get pregnant now, I live in the
The
Midwest now,
year
things are different over
1800 and
here.
now it's done this, and it's going to
Well, yes,
continue.
it's I don't believe that that's true.
Then
We
why
can
is
agree to disagree.
South Korea is at under 1, Lav? It's at 0.90. It's at less than
Well,
one
we're not
child per
South Korea,
woman.
we have yes, but we're and I understand how.
Similar trends.
So that yes, I believe you and I agree with you. I think that this is how we move forward. I think that women make motherhood glamorous again. I think that men value motherhood, value women in women's place again. I think that men try to select for women who want that. I think that women tell other women this is what men like. If you want a man, this is what you have to do. I think that there is a return to church. I think that you see that also. There is a return to church in insular
No,
communities, and that's going
there's a
to
return to Protestantism, which is a
you.
more hang on. There's a return to Protestantism from women because they find a form of buying a new reputation from generally past promiscuity. They feel like it buys them a new reputation for this type of reform in order to join Protestant churches. They actually are not joining traditional churches at nearly the rates that men are. Men are joining those churches, and they're joining them quite young before they even get into any pattern of degeneracy at all, whereas women are joining them later in life after they've already made the quote mistakes as a way to buy a new
Every
reputation.
I don't know if it's to buy a new reputation. I think that listen, I don't you're not a woman and you're not looking at media through the eyes of a woman and that's probably for the best because it's mindless and
My
it's
wife's a
retarded.
woman,
But
and she does look at it.
and she
She
has to
sees
and
the same trends.
yeah, well no, it's not trends that I'm talking about. It's the whole world, every commercial, every show, every movie, everything is telling you to be a girl boss, an independent woman, that nothing you do matters, that your body doesn't matter, that there's no that sex isn't sacred anymore. And then leave your house at 18 where your parents are stupid millennial sorry your parents are stupid millennials and they've been tout the same thing because they hate their parents because their parents are boomers and told and controlled them because it was like we see where this is going, please 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 don't do this, and then they rebelled against their parents and then those people raised children and
That's
those
just all
people raised
psycho.
free love
That's like
parents.
psychobabble to me. That's psychological babble to me. Like that is not
It is psychological but it's not
when
babble.
I look at the trends, it's not actually what I see. I saw they see this revolution is being orchestrated by a bunch of really miserable women for the purposes of assaulting the reputation of all women. The idea here just being, hey, if we get rid of your virtue, then men can't select. They can't make selections based on virtue anymore. And this seems to be encased in their writings in a very big way with the deconstruction of the family unit, which is the primary motivation of every single feminist writer I've read, which is an innumerable amount, seemingly. Always it is for a transhumanist future and the deconstruction of the family
Well,
through
there's outliers.
liberation.
Yes, well, here's the thing, there's outliers. I don't believe that women like Andrea Dworkin were ever supposed to be a housewife, obviously. And then she writes to a community who shows a community who shows a community about these writings and they pick and choose. Like, she actually wanted a feminist separatist, female separatist world, and now you have people who are touting Andrea Dworkin, but they believe that men can be women, and they're not. They're picking and choosing. They're picking and choosing what feminist agendas they like based on trying to skirt accountability for their
But it
actions.
moved
I
into the
agree with you.
but that
I agree with
division,
you.
moved into the ethos, and it worked. Counter division works just as well. Like, you're using the enemy's exact same playbook against them. Divide and conquer. If you think that division doesn't work, you're wrong. And if you think that I need to
No, I think it
convince
does work.
and if you think I need to convince women, I also think you're wrong. I think ultimately women
But
women are
your goal,
ultimately
let's
not
make
going to
it
have the
worse
say
really
anyway.
bad. Let's make it worse faster so that we could get there.
Well, it's not
Is what you're
worse.
saying.
No, it would be better actually if there's more division, more people focused on this. You can actually probably bridge this gap by just demonstrating that most of the maximum degeneracy, at least when it comes to the vote, is decided by women. And they vote in the degeneracy every single time. They are always the deciding vote every single time. And I think if you can maximize that messaging, then just like the anti-suffragettes of old who rejected feminism, I think that women also will begin to police their own. Now, I have a completely different way of moving about that than you do, right? But it seems to be highly effective, so highly effective, in fact, that
Removing the female vote?
that's why we're having this conversation to begin with. What's that?
What is that?
Well, and so at this
Is it
point,
laughing at women?
yeah, laughing at is what I think was a primary motivator for the Supreme Court to begin the rollback of rights, was laughing at them, humiliating them, talking to them, everything else that we could do. Trump had to placate and play into that because that's what his base wanted, right? These people are baby and they need to be shamed socially as much as possible. That definitely had a massive motivating effect on how the Supreme Court ruled on that. And you must know that that has to be true because when there's more liberal issues now, they seem to be ruling the other direction where there seems to be less shame in that department. This is the same thing if we roll it back to the 18th Amendment. Women had a motivational power to move. Go ahead.
You laugh at a population and you make them a
Not a
fringe.
population.
But you laugh. Okay,
I laugh at individuals.
This is exactly what happened with Trump, is that there were so many people that were so anti-Trump that Trump created this insular cult following. You laugh at it, they're going to get more insane, more insane, more insane.
How can the majority be a cult following?
Bigger, and then it's going to get well, it's not anymore.
It's
not anymore. But it wasn't.
He got the popular vote. I mean, it's not a cult following.
Yes. No, that's what I'm saying. It grows. It grows and it grows, and then it gets more insular, more insular, and then it gets bigger. And then it gets bigger. And then there's some people now there are fringes even of Trump. Now there are people who've voted for Trump don't always agree with them. But at first it was people
it seems like you're making my argument here for me.
Well, this is what you're creating this on the other side, is what I'm saying.
No, I'm creating it on the right. Yes, exactly. So if you create it on the other side.
Now you are creating with this a population eventually in 10 years that will make available to everyone always and forever. Like you are creating the pendulum swing that you are holding it so far back it's going to knock back completely. And when you will,
then why didn't it happen? Then why didn't it happen with Trump? Why didn't it happen with Trump?
Because it's not. So this is what it looks like right now. This is what it looked like 10 years ago. This is what it looks like now, right? And this is what it will look like. Right?
No.
Because you can see this trend in the last 100 years, Andrew.
What you can see,
it goes tiny and then bigger, and now it's bigger.
This was hang on.
Even bigger.
This was always the way it was. So let me give you an example.
Of course, I believe it.
You go back to slavery. Right? There was an actual civil war. You couldn't have a bigger pendulum swing. You couldn't have a bigger pendulum swing than that. Okay? They were talk
and
about.
I think we're headed towards
yeah,
that.
talk about division, right? But what I'm saying is, ultimately, all you're doing is making my case for me. Okay, so here's Trump. He has a small insular cult following, and now the majority of the nation backs up the ideologies which he's producing.
But you're also creating a fringe group right now that will grow bigger and grow bigger and grow bigger and grow bigger. And so now, you're creating a fringe group on the other side.
Other side of what?
On the Democrat side.
No.
On the opposition side.
Yeah, that's
you absolutely
prove
are.
It is. Well, demonstrate how that can even be the case.
In 10 years, I'll reach out to you.
In 10 years. Yeah, 10 years, it'll be my fault that Democrats are winning because they get humiliated over and over and over again.
No, it's not your fault exactly. I mean, you have to know as an intelligent man, seeing what happened to Trump, seeing what happened to Trump's following, and seeing how it's grown, and you have to attribute some of that to how insular it became, how you had to be a diehard fan to get anything with Trump, and then how it grew and how it grew and how it grew, and
Mm,
how then people and then how they kicked him off of Twitter, how that made things more insular, how creating that making them more fringe, how saying you can't sit with us if you even have
so
a
what
little bit
happened
of a
is in 10
Republican inkling.
years, let's see what happened in 10 years with Trump. What happened in 10 years with Trump was that
Now it's the
Trump,
majority, and now
yeah,
they're taking away rights, right? Like,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
which
That
to
sounds
me,
awesome. Like, that sounds awesome. Like, I
yes,
can't,
I agree with you, and I agree with you, and I agree with you, and I
yeah.
want to keep it this way, and I want to keep it this way,
Yeah,
which
but
is
I want to
why
keep going. I want to keep going. So just like the communists did and the Marxists did and the infiltration of the institutions,
to some degree I agree with you.
showing the division there, right?
Yes.
I want to keep that going. And we can eliminate that.
But you
Next,
have
we
a
can eliminate gay
fundamental
marriage.
misunderstanding of human nature if that's the case.
Yeah, well,
Because you can't just keep it going. You
well,
can't just keep it going
you
because
can keep.
there's
Then
always
how
going
does the
to
left keep
be
it going?
a fringe that is growing.
How
There's
does the
always going to
left
be
keep it going?
they don't have to because you're doing it.
No, they're
Is what I'm
doing
saying.
it. The left is responsible for the
Andrew,
right wing
throughout this
now.
conversation, Andrew, throughout this conversation, even in the past 10 minutes, you agree that what happened with Trump is because of the Democrats. Democrats pushed people to be Trumpers because of how they made it untenable to even have a little bit
No,
of, "Oh, wait, I actually think a
it
baby
was
is a person."
Republicans who pushed people into Trumpism, not Democrats. People
That's
already hated Democrats.
that's
The
not true.
problem
It's
is
just not true.
that the
There are more Democrats
Republican
that voted for Trump this past
we had
election.
more the most entrenched yeah, this election. We had the most entrenched
Yes, that's what
Republican.
I'm saying, this election,
Yeah,
so,
yeah. But we had the
you're
most
straight.
entrenched, hang on, Lav. We had the most entrenched Republican politicians that you've ever seen, okay, in office. And Trump was an outlier. It was the hatred towards the
Yes.
establishment of the Republican leadership and the hatred towards Republicans which drove Trumpism, not backlash against Democrats. It was
Well, it's
not backlash against Democrats. A little bit maybe against backlash, but nothing more than what you would normally see in a off election year when a Democrat's been president for a while. You'd see the normal cultural shift go over to some degree as backlash against the opposition party. I agree with that. Trumpism wasn't that, though. Trumpism was an internal cleaning of the House where the whole idea was remove the entrenched established swamp on the Republican side. That was the main thing. Get rid of the swamp. Get rid of the swamp. Get rid of the swamp. The Democrats were already considered to be the degenerate scumbag party. We wanted
but
the
not everyone
revision
who
of this
voted.
party. Go
So
ahead.
majority of the US is still Democrat, but he got the majority vote. Majority of the US is still Democrat. Trump got Democrats to vote for him.
They're center left, not Democrat. Center left. The modern Democrat is more left now. But yes, I agree with you.
Okay,
Most people
sure.
are center left. Yes.
Yes. And it the Democrat Party became so ridiculous that this Trump movement, and I think also propagated by the left in silencing Trump, in canceling people who had Republican ideals, it became bigger and bigger and bigger. They isolated themselves. So now you have this big thing that's growing, and I agree with you.
I think
I genuinely I think that we could go a little bit further also with conservatism.
but
I
it's
think
like
that
the opposite, right? It's like Democrats didn't really change. They were doing the same Democrat they always did. Pander to minorities, pander to minority group, pander to minority group. Trumpism was a response directly to the Republican Party and the perceived degeneracy inside of the Republican Party. That's why the Fuentes campaign against TPUSA of how is it that allowing degenerates into
Trump
this.
is a degenerate. I don't even think that that's true. Trump had like multiple cheated on his wife, had a
So
relationship with
what?
married a nude
Yeah.
model.
So
I
what?
mean, this is I don't think that there's this huge call to anti-degeneracy. I really just think that
Then why is it that
whatever.
day one Trump said there's only two genders? Trump day one said
That's not
there's only
because
two
he's a normal
genders
because that's
signed into
most
law.
people believe that. Most people believe that. Most people believe that because that
Yes.
is innate and
Yes,
normal.
because most people are
Um,
anti-degeneracy.
it's that well, that's I wouldn't even call that degeneracy. I would just say
Yeah,
that's
I would call it
anti-truth.
degeneracy.
That's truth.
Yeah.
I think that also it can be degenerate, but I also just think it's
Well,
truth.
moving off politics.